June the 7th, 2026. Guys, welcome to another episode of the Ancient Intelligent Files. This one's very important, and it's a little different, but just try and hang in there with me, because our Father told us we're destroyed for lack of knowledge. He also told us that in the end times, things would be revealed. And how does that work? Is it because you do nothing to acquire that knowledge, or do you study to show yourself approved? Do you understand what I'm saying? So if the knowledge is presented, then it's up to you to dig it up. Now, you know me, I'm a little bit crazy, I'm old. So what I want to do for the next couple of videos is I want to use AI, and I want to use it looking at ancient languages. And let me give you a little bit of backup on this conversation that we're about to go through here. I went in and I asked about the LLM, which is large language models, and how they're trained, what they're trained on, and how many languages they understand, how many different ancient languages that they can decipher. Look at the very elements of where the words originated and what is the most concise meaning. And so what I'm doing is like using guys a concordance in a way, looking at Greek and Hebrew translations, things like that. But here it's a little different, because the concordances were usually put together by a man or a group of men that had pieces of the knowledge. But what we're seeing now, again, in these times of great knowledge, is the ability to dive very deep. So, you know, some people, AI is like a gun. You can use it to protect yourself, or you can use it to commit a crime. Anyway, so I asked about Greek, or the Greek language, and it first went to the modern Greek, and that they had that under control. It was no problem, and they had even worked with the Greek people themselves, and the Greek people, the people in that nation, had developed their large language model that could be introduced to all of them. In other words, they compiled all the Greek literature and stuff that they had, and every article that was needed for AI to look at it and understand the language. And so then I asked, well, what about ancient Greek like we see in the New Testament? And that was a little more difficult for them to learn. And I'm going to skip the technical parts of that. But what we talked about was the fact that the ancient Greek, and I have books, several books with the ancient Greek in them, didn't have a lot of periods and things like that. And the large language models were trained to where you could break the words down easier and see the meaning and things like that. But so what happened was Meta and a couple of other people, Google, got together and put together a program called Pegasus. And what that did was focus on the ancient Greek. And they started bringing it all back together. Now, this is going to be a very interesting series, because we can go from here into ancient Egyptian writings, things like that. But this one relates, and the reason I went here is it relates exactly to everything else in this series about the desert and the collapse and the water and the power and all of that, and how that works out. And what we're looking at, guys, again, not just in the Mojave Desert, in that entire Colorado River area, but all over the world, is drastic earth changes. Very drastic, to where man is not going to be able to make it at the same level that we are seeing now. And so my question was about Peter. And was 2 Peter 3:10, because it ties into what we're seeing, the collapse of modern civilization in many areas, and how that relates to biblical prophecy, especially in the New Testament. And so what I did, and I'm going to read through it, but I introduced the verse from the New International Version, because it happens to be one of the best ancient Greek translations of them. Now, I have King James. We usually use that. But especially in Peter, the New International Version, called the NIV, seems to be more accurate in the, again, translation of the ancient Greek. Now, so I entered that. And I said, the reason I asked, and what I did, I said, is this a proper translation from the Greek to English? But the day of the Lord will come like a thief. Each one of these words have a meaning, and it's very important. But the day of the Lord will come like a thief. The heavens will disappear with a roar. The elements will be dissolved, and the fire and the earth and its works will not be found. Now, works is a very important word here. You see that? Right there, very important. What are we seeing the destruction of in the Southwest? The works of man, not the works of nature. The works of man tried to build an infinite loop of energy and water in the desert. Those works are not going to make it, but there's going to be a much more drastic change. Again, let me read it one more time without interrupting. But the day of the Lord will come like a thief. The heavens will disappear with a roar. The elements will be dissolved in the fire, and the earth and its works will not be found. And so reply was, again, that's the most accurate version of 2 Peter, tying into the old Greek. And so it says, when we look directly at the underlying first century Koine Greek, that's what we're talking about. That's spelled K-O-I-N-E. The text handles three incredible, intense, technical Greek words better than traditional older translations like the King James Version. That's because the ability to understand Greek has advanced since the days of King James. But it says, evaluating the original Greek roots reveal how your quote matches the ancient wording. Now, again, I introduced the verse from the NIV, and it's just replying as your quote. Okay, so just so you understand that when it says your quote, it is the verse that I put into the system. It says, with a roar, it's a Greek word named rosodon. The literal meaning, this is what's called an onomatopoeia. It describes a loud, rushing, whistling, or crackling sound like the whir of an arrow flying through the air or the rapid crackle of a massive forest fire. The translation comparison, if you compare it to the King James, translates this vaguely as with great noise. The translation with a roar is much more accurate to the specific terrifying sound of a rushing atmospheric inferno. This is what Peter was writing about. And when we're talking about the elements, guys, and we're going to get to that, that's the earth, wind, fire, that group. Okay? It's important, but because Revelation has a slightly different meaning from the words of Peter to the words of Christ, then we have to look at it from both sides. But let's stay right with Peter because he's got it narrowed down, and the Greek has very specific meanings. In this word elements, in the Greek, is called stoichia. In the ancient world, this meant the foundational, basic component building blocks of reality. To an ancient philosopher, it meant earth, air, fire, and water. The translation of the translation, both older and newer versions use the elements in a modern sense. It reads perfectly as the atomic building blocks of matter dissolving. And it goes on and says, will not be found. Now, the last line is where the translation exposes a massive courtroom battle between ancient Greek manuscripts. Let's check it out again. King James compared to some of the other stuff. The KJV says the earth and its works shall be burned up. This is what latter scribes wrote because it made logical sense with the fire context. And guys, it's kind of good news in a lot of ways. The deepest manuscripts, when archaeologists found the oldest, most authoritative Greek codices like the Codex Sinaiticus and the Codex Vaticanus from 300 CE, they discovered the original word wasn't burned up. It was paired with a negative, meaning will not be found or will be laid bare. But we are told there will be a new world. It will not be found, it will be laid bare. Again, it has to do with the works of men. The quote uses will not be found, which proves it was translated directly from the most accurate primitive Greek manuscripts discovered by modern archaeology, rather than the corrupted text used in the Middle Ages. And guys, we've seen that time after time. Not only books, but words changed, books removed, things like that. So that's why I've always said for at least 15 years here, that use the old languages. That's one of the things I talk about anyway. And I ask about how Peter would know these words, this terminology of the melting of the elements and things like that. It says 2,000 years ago, without knowing anything about modern physics, nuclear reactors, or global grid infrastructure. And all of this led from a previous conversation about the new drops at Meade and Powell and what's about to happen. And we're getting to how it all ends. You're seeing the end before the beginning. That's okay. We're going to get there. It says, the author of this Greek text used a precise vocabulary to describe a total atomic liquidation of an environment, the roar, the dissolving of elements, and the erasure of man's works. Whether viewed through lens of ancient theology or modern thermodynamic breakdown, the arithmetic remains completely aligned. This text, structurally sound translation, is a structurally sound translation of the original ancient manuscript. Now, going back to 2 Peter 3:10-12, in this famous passage, the author uses highly vivid, catastrophic language that readers often note sounds strikingly similar to a modern nuclear detonation or thermodynamic collapse. And it dives into the three words that we're talking about. Elements, or stoicheia, dissolved, or the lucitia, I think, melted, tekatia. Anyway, elements again. This refers to fundamental baseline building blocks of the universe: earth, air, fire, water. In modern terms, it is the exact word used for the periodic table of elements. Dissolved. This is a form of luo, which means to loose, untie, or unbind, or break down into component parts. The text literally states that the fundamental subunits holding reality together will be unbound. This strongly mirrors the modern physical concept of nuclear fission or splitting the atom. And then melted, guys, it's used in verse 12. The word means to liquefy, waste away, or melt down due to intense, consuming heat. It implies a total phase transition of matter under extreme thermodynamic pressure. And guys, they talk about nuclear here, but there's things that are more powerful than that. For example, a gamma ray burst, or an extremely powerful solar flare, one like we've never experienced before but has happened. And the thing about, like a thief in the night, guys, they can observe stars that they think may create a gamma ray burst, and they're watching two at about 7,500 light years away from our planet, but they have no way to say it's about to happen. It happens at the speed of light. They can just see some of the things building up, knowing that eventually we're going to see a gamma ray burst. And the two they're watching are the closest that we know of. But they don't know when. In other words, it will be like a thief in the night. And this element burning, to me now, applies more to a gamma ray burst or, again, extreme coronal mass ejection. But a gamma ray burst is very quick. And a CME, we don't know the moment the CME will flash from the sun. We do know that 8.2 minutes later, the photon burst hits us, and we see the radio blackouts, and that depending on the speed of the CME, it could take a couple days to get here, right? Not with a gamma ray burst. And so that could happen. Guys, it happened during the same period, right after the 2004 tsunami in the great quake that we saw in Banda Aceh. But it was not directly tied to that event, but nobody knew it was coming. And there was one even more powerful that in 2022. But there were glancing blows, and they were further away from the two that NASA and the scientists around the world were watching. But again, by the time any signal comes from a satellite to Earth, it's already over. As fast as the speed of light. There's no warning is what I'm saying. Like a thief in the night. Elements will be burned up, the works of men. And it says this text, these three words, elements dissolved and melted, it pairs these words with what's called kalsamina, which translates to burning with intense heat. The literal chronological chain of events in the text is an intense rushing roar, followed by the unbinding of the atomic building blocks, resulting in a molten breakdown TICO under fervent heat. Now, it would be fair to look at a couple of different verses and see how the Greek language can be changed in our different Bible verses. Let's start at the King James at the top. The phasing of the final sentence. The earth also and the works that are therein shall be burned up. Now this relies on the Greek word that kakatasete, implies complete thermal destruction and ash. But in the English Standard Version, and the earth and the works that are done on it will be exposed. Okay, that's kind of like exposure physically and spiritually. Relies on the older manuscript variant, will be found laid bare, implies a cosmic stripping away of all covers. The New International Version, the one we were using, guys, in the earth and everything done in it will be laid bare. Similar to the ESV, it focuses on the total uncovering of disclosure of man's works before the Creator. You thought you could go in and tame my desert. You thought you could design a system of an infinite loop of water to power, knowing in the end it would result in destruction, and I will destroy those that destroy the earth. That's exposure, and that's the destruction of the works. And the good news I was saying is this is not talking about, I don't think, the complete destruction of mankind or the complete destruction of the planet. Exposing the works, how would that happen? It would happen when you see mass migration. Having to leave what man thought he built as his paradise. But this is talking about a rapid event. And to be honest with you, it is happening very rapid. But again, to completely overdo it, it would take something. And who would be the survivors? Would it be the people like we've talked about that had shelter or Vera or whatever? But it does tell us that endures to the end shall be kept safe. And we're told, do not be destroyed for lack of knowledge also. Now in the New American Standard Bible, they call the NASB, and the earth and its works will be burned up. Also discovered, acknowledges both major manuscript traditions, bridging physical incineration with judicial exposure. You see the combination there? And this is why it's so important to go back to the ancient languages. Modern man likes to smooth over anything that wrinkles his plans, including the words from our Father. It says, whether interpreted as a theological standard for divine judgment or an ancient description of thermodynamic meltdown, the math of the text remains perfectly intact. The author outlines a progression under the structural integrity of matter fails first, the LUO, leading to a release of heat energy that liquefies the environment, TICO, erasing the artificial structures built by human civilization. And, you know, guys, I mentioned yesterday about reading comments, and I've, from, you know, that were very good questions. And one was, what about, I think it's called Palo Verde, the largest nuclear plant in the U.S., is about 50 miles west of Phoenix, going towards California, in the desert. And the question was, well, that can replace what we lose from Meade. And technically, it can replace a good bit of it. But then, looking deeper into it, guys, it uses so much water a day that it's unbelievable. And what it does it through evaporation. You've got 3 nuclear reactors, Palo Verde. And between the 3 of them, guys, they use millions of gallons of water a day. I think there's 45,000 gallons per minute. 45,000 gallons per minute. And the technical data shows that in the winter, that will drop to 40,000 because you're not using the air conditioning. In the summer, that can rise to about 60,000 gallons per second that are evaporated. Now, the way they justified it when they built Palo Alto, guys, was that they had an agreement. They would take the wastewater from Phoenix. They would use it so it wouldn't be a drawdown of the fresh water supply from the Phoenix area. But what Phoenix is being forced to do now, because we're seeing the collapse of man's plans, is they're having to, and it's called the, I think, AWP, Arizona Water Protection Board or something like that. One of you guys may know. Anyway, they are planning now on 3 different groups getting together, big companies, and totally recycling wastewater back into your drinking water system there. And I've been there many times, and you can tell on the golf course, things like that they're using it, right? But not as drinking water. But now they're going into being forced to do that. So here comes the problem. You're using 45,000 gallons of wastewater that now can be cleaned according to the people in Phoenix, and you're evaporating it. So we're seeing a battle coming with Palo Verde also, guys. And another thing is that wastewater originates from Meade. I don't care if it's wastewater, clear water, or whatever. They're using 45,000 gallons per minute. That's river water. And not only can it not be recycled, but it's evaporated. And so all of these machines that man has created, all the works that they thought was the perfect circle, we'll dam up, we'll trap water and let it create electricity, and we've got an infinite motor. They just didn't understand the dynamics, or greed took over. Probably the latter. And guys, you know me. So I introduced another question into this AI system because it has that knowledge database available to it. It doesn't store it. It has the immediate retrieval of all of the nodes. You understand what I'm saying? And I said, well, does it describe the end of the planet or the end of man? It says the text outlines, again, it describes both, but it treats them in fundamentally different ways. The text outlines the literal cosmic end of the physical planet and the universe as we know it. Again, the heavens are rolled up, right? While describing the end of man not as annihilation, but as total exposure and judgment. The original Greek terms demonstrate how the author separates the fate of the physical planet from the fate of humanity. Those that endure to the end shall be kept safe. And I've got 2 points to this video. I'm not through with it. But the 2 points are, I do a little bit of teaching, but on a different level as far as technology, in the sense that if you're going to work with AI, which is one of the greatest tools, like I said, tools can be used for bad or good, but one of the greatest tools ever handed to mankind in the search of the ancient knowledge. Listen to what I'm saying, or you can argue with it if you want to. But the trick, or not the trick, but the key is to know a good bit about the question you're asking and ask it in a way that shows that you have some sense. You know what I'm saying? In other words, what are you looking for? Determine that first. What do you want to find out? Where can you find it? Then dig in if it's ancient Greek or ancient Hebrew or any of that, guys. Whatever language it is, make sure you kind of understand what you're asking and know how to key in the exact knowledge you're looking for. Not the answer, but the knowledge. Now, a couple of different things here. We're talking about the heavens, and it has the word here, Ua or Noah, I guess. In the ancient worldview, this meant the sky, the atmosphere, in the visible stellar universe. The text says they will pass away with a roar. Now, that's what makes me think this is way more than a nuclear meltdown, that it is something like a gamma ray burst. Okay? The elements, the stoichia, as established, these are the fundamental atomic building blocks of the physical world. The text states they will melt and dissolve under intense thermodynamic heat. The ancient text is describing a literal reset of physical matter. It is not a poetic metaphor for a bad day in human history. It describes the structural breakdown of the planet's underlying physics to make way for what verse 13 calls a new heaven and a new earth. Is that when the surviving tribes that after this, that appear, guys, the new earth, the new heaven, we know that Christ sets his foot down, right? But, and he says those who endure to the end shall be kept safe. Not all are destroyed. So are we looking at, again, a tidal wave of destruction with a few islands of sanctuary, whether it's underground, above ground, wherever it's at, because maybe you decided that you did want that knowledge, that you would not be destroyed for lack of it, that you started to dive a little deeper. When our Father sees you reaching out to him, he'll reach back to you. And he all tools, he creates everything. And that's the very basic core of the title of this series, Ancient Intelligence. We're looking at ancient texts being interpreted properly and cross-referencing it to make sure to get a clear understanding of what our Father was telling us and his Son. And it says about the end of man, it's moral exposure, not annihilation. When the text shifts its focus to humanity, the vocabulary changes entirely. It does not say that human beings are melted or liquidated into nothingness. Instead, it targets the earth and the works that are done on it. The works, this refers to everything humanity has built. Again, it's a little repetitive, but bear with me. Our cities, our global grids, our technologies, and our historical achievements. What you're seeing here now is comparing the ancient Greek, guys, to the modern world. Laid bare, exposed, that word, as noted in the manuscript variants, the oldest Greek texts do not say human works or simply burned up. They use a word that means will be found out, discovered, or stripped naked. Again, there's good news. Therefore, the text describes the end of human history and civilization. But guys, where has that brought us? What are we on the verge of? Wars and rumors of wars. The collapse of civilization due to the greed of mankind building in the deserts and draining the aquifers worldwide. Man's artificial structures are completely erased by the physical liquidation of the planet, leaving humanity completely exposed, standing uncovered before divine judgment. Guys, wouldn't that kind of be like the ancient tribes sitting under the stars? Think about what I'm telling you. Guys, and if you look back at Genesis 8:21, God said, I will not again destroy the earth by flood. It stands true, and it does not negate 2 Peter at all. It describes a future purging by fire. The consistent scriptural message is that while God wants to use water to judge the earth, he will finalize cosmic history with a refining fire, resulting in a renewed creation freed from corruption, kind of like before the Garden of Eden was opened. In this sense, the earth will undergo a profound transformation rather than ceasing to exist. It aligns with God's plans from the beginning to restore creation to its intended state, leading eventually to a new heaven and a new earth, where God's people dwell in perpetual righteousness and fellowship with Him. And guys, if you think about it, that's a call to repentance also, isn't it? You know, and repentance means to turn around and go the other way. What does Christ say? Basically, He says, you can talk about all the laws and all that you want to, but here, the two golden rules. You love your Father, constantly focusing on Him and His guidance. And number two, you treat everyone the way you want to be treated. Now, if everyone did those two things, you wouldn't need politicians. You wouldn't need police. You wouldn't have crime. That will be the survivors. Most of you are the people, most of you guys are in this category. That's why you're here. I can tell by the conversations. Most of you love animals. Things like that. You're very friendly. You love our Father. You talk about worship. You talk about, and guys, that is a gathering together of His children. Just like in this video. Now, I'm no angel, I'm no prophet, and I'm not claiming to be. I just know how to dive into stuff, look at it, and I've always analyzed this planet. Since I was a young kid, staring up at the stars, wondering. And that was always my drive, was wanting to know more. And that's what we're sharing here. And I hope it is a positive message. But it's talking about the tribulation of man coming before the wrath of God, and then the restoration. We got things, but when you're talking about trumpets sounding in battle, it may not be one trumpet sound right now, then a week later, no, they could come within minutes of each other. Attack, left flank, right flank, retreat, whatever it is. These trumpets can come very fast, and we're seeing the collapse start now. Our Father is good to us. Now, guys, let's look at the updated, as of yesterday, measurements of Lake Mead. This goes back 14 days, starting with Sunday, May the 24th, right there. We were at 10:51:67, guys. We watched it go down on the night of May 31st, coming into June, below the 10:59. And now we're a little below the 10:48:63. We will look at that exact number. But what we do see here is the difference in acre feet in the content. We're looking at about 200,000 acre feet drop from 7,804,000 to 7,584,000, a couple 100,000 acre feet down in the 14 days. But right here is a key number that averages to a 0.22 drop per day, 0.22 feet per day. That means in 5 days you're over a foot, right? So that number is more than I used in the data to get us to the 60-day mark. Remember that? I was using a 0.20444, not 2.2. Okay? And so that it just tells you that everything is changing. Another factor I want to point out. But something's going on. I don't know if the feds are up at Lake Powell right now. I'm not sure, because they had averaged out around 8,000 inflow from Lake Powell. That's the cubic feet per second coming down 260 miles through the Grand Canyon via the evaporation route. Anyway, so we've increased the input at over from, say, 8,000 to 9232. So you got 1,000 cubic foot per second increase average. So one of two things happening. The feds are letting Lake Powell release more, or there was some rain upstream somewhere. I hadn't seen much rain. Now the outflows that changes because of the downstream demand, but it is averaging almost 15,000 cubic feet per second. Now here's a critical factor. I've mentioned this many times. Right here, high temps. First day, which was over 100, as it was creeping up, guys, goes back to June 2nd. 104, 105, 107, 107, 103. So after the second day, the evaporation loop sticks in. It starts trapping. That's why we're seeing an increased inflow from some source right here and protecting that 1048.63 we're seeing here. And again, this is Mountain Standard Time for you guys in the area. This is Lake Mead Hoover Dam. And this is updated hourly. You'll see right here, let me pull it down just a little. They have not come in with the 10 to 11 a.m. report yet. Anyway, we're standing at 1048.59. And that's because they have shut down the release quite a bit. Again, that's regulated by downstream demand. I realize that. But at midnight, they were releasing 17,000 cubic feet a second. Now they're down to 2,000. Quite a drop, but that's normal. But that's why we don't have a constant collapse. But we're rapidly going to change this number, 1048.50, to 1035 in just less than 2 months. Now let's take a quick look at Lake Powell, guys, because those numbers don't add up unless, like I said, two things happen. They're releasing more. In other words, the feds have lifted their hand just a little bit, or maybe the feds are feeling pressure to keep Mead stable. We'll just see. But the initial step in by the Bureau of Reclamations a month or so ago was to limit the output of Powell to save its infrastructure. It produces power, electricity, and water, and all of that too. But that's exactly what we're looking at. Let's come down 14 days. Starting back on May 24th. Again, this is what we were seeing, and this is what was locked in by the Bureau of Reclamations at that time. I think around 6 million acre feet or something, but now we've not, let's see, 7,154, now 849. So we're about 1,300 cubic feet increase in outflow. So the feds are doing a balancing act. You're looking at it in real time. They're doing a balancing act between saving Powell and saving Mead. Powell, if it continues the way it's going, and they're draining Flaming Gorge upstream to keep Lake Powell. But guys, with this summer, all of these sources are going to run down. That's why our numbers on this collapse timing is increasing almost by the daily reports. But again, they've increased the output that they had limited to protect Mead. They're getting an inflow. Look, they're trying to balance it coming in. That would be upstream, Flaming Gorge, etc. Started out 8,000, 10.8, now 8.5. So that, again, they're putting out what they bring in as of yesterday. That will not continue because the inflow will decrease. If you look at the videos, if you want to check it out, or you're upstream, say the Flaming Gorge area, look on YouTube, look at the water drops at Flaming Gorge. And one of the restaurant owners there was explaining in a video that that entire area depends on that lake at Flaming Gorge, from the restaurants, marinas, all of that. It's kind of built around that situation. And now that the water's collapsing so fast, their metal sidewalks and piers leading out to the marinas and the boat ramps are pointing down and breaking apart. So it's killing their way of life, their means of livelihood in that area. There's effects going all around, but right now we're seeing this balancing act, 5 days of triple-digit heat. Now let's take a look at the next 14 days of the weather around Lake Mead. This is kind of the focal point. Tomorrow, June 7th, 95. Then Tuesday, jumping back to 108. See that 100 dropping back. You're getting a little break in the 90s there, guys. Coming Monday, June 4th, we'll go back into triple digits. June 14th. 15th, 16th, 17th. Let's see if what we got below that. Everything stays triple digits up to June 20th. The evaporation rate, guys, is going to be tremendous. The strain on the grid to run the ACs is going to be tremendous. Again, evaporation rates. Nothing is looking positive looking at this end of the whole spectrum. You guys have got to plan something different. Now, some of you have mentioned about where to go. And we talked about it. You got problems just about everywhere you look. But if it were me, I mean, we have rivers and stuff like that, but all rivers run dry. But maybe a major place, if it's even allowed, the Great Lakes. Just saying, I'm sure a lot of it's watched, a lot of it's controlled. A lot of companies probably tap into it already, a lot of water sources. But someplace maybe like that, fresh water, of course. But water, you can't make it without. You guys that live in those areas are going to turn out to be much luckier than you think, unless heavy restrictions are put on you. So if you're in the Great Lake regions, guys, again, of course, you got Michigan and you got Chicago touches it. You got Wisconsin up through there and then the other Great Lakes. Let me know what the situation is there as far as are they restricting you from withdrawing water on small levels, or could you just walk down and get what you need? You may have to haul it back, in big containers or buckets or whatever, but do you have that access? That would be important information. And I'm not trying to throw a migration your way or anything like that, but it would appear there may be some room. You may have to go a little further north in some of the locations I was talking about. But it's something to consider. And by the way, I do want to go back for a minute about the gamma ray burst, and I want to give you the names of the two that they are watching. They won't know the minute that they're going to erupt or explode, but they are watching them. And the two closest ones that I know that they're watching, and they don't know when it's going to happen, but they're saying that they are in serious trouble. One is Eta Carinae, which is 7,500 light years away. But guys, they've watched them that are millions of light years away, and billions, okay? Astronomers widely consider Eta Carinae to be the Milky Way galaxy's ultimate ticking time bomb. It is volatile, supermassive binary star system that is rapidly nearing the end of its life. It is highly unstable, and scientists are actively monitoring it because it could collapse in a spectacular supernova or hypernova explosion at any moment. Like a thief in the night, not when you expect it. Biologically speaking, any moment in astronomy means it could happen tonight or a few thousand years from now. That timing is in our Father's hands, and this is just one of the scenarios that we're talking about. Now, one of the reasons they're watching this one is because back in 1840, that star system, suffered a massive near-death experience known as the Great Eruption, 1840. It violently blasted out two gigantic lobes of dust and gas. And guys, you've seen these images of these hourglass nebulae and these supernovas. It was called the Homunculus Nebula. Even though it shed the mass of multiple suns, the star somehow survived this supernova imposter event. In other words, it appeared that that's what had happened, but it came out, and so they're still watching it. Again, 1840s. It had extreme mass and power. The primary star is a monster shining roughly 5 million times brighter than our sun and holding up to 100 times the sun's mass. That's how it survived, because of its extreme mass and what did it pull into itself. Stars this massive burn through their nuclear fuel at a furious pace and have highly unstable, violent death throes. And this matches the description that Peter was talking about like a thief in the night. You can watch all you want to, but when it happens, you're too late. But if they see certain things happen, like an increase in energy, some you may see evacuate, get out of Dodge, whatever. And guys, it's dangerous. It is extremely fascinating to me to try to understand our Father's creation. Listen to this. It has a dangerous companion with it. It's a two-star system called a binary star, like our sun, and possibly Jupiter being a failed gas giant. Anyway, every 5.5 years, the smaller companion star crashes through the outer gas envelope of the giant primary star, causing immense shock waves and blasting out high-energy X-rays and cosmic rays. Again, this is the closest one. I know it's 7,500 light years, and that distance may be why the Earth is saved, just like it was saved in the eruption of 1840. But anything closer than that, it would probably end everything. Now, again, every 5.5 years. Very interesting. It says when Eta Carinae finally undergoes a true supernova explosion, it will release a catastrophic amount of energy. From Earth's perspective, the explosion will be so bright that it will be easily visible during the day and could outshine the moon at night. Think about that. Now, someone out there I can tell is thinking about, well, BP, when is that 5.5 year period? What are the dates on it? Well, you're thinking good, my friend, because that was my next question. Accounting for the precise 5.5 year or 2023 day orbital cycle, the countdown resets the next several passes. Listen, the last one was September 25th, most recent. The companion star plunged through the primary thick stellar wind right on cue. The system's X-ray emissions briefly dropped, and astronomers successfully captured the event using ground scopes and space-based platforms like the Chandra X-ray Observatory. Guys, they're watching. Now, before I continue, let me say I have no way of knowing if these are the points that we would see the supernova. It is like a thief in the night. No man knows the day. These are just possible trigger points. But the next one would be March 2031. The companion star would swing back around on its highly elliptical orbit, screaming past the primary giant to trigger the next major dip in X-rays and spikes in the deep UV radiation. Then in 2036, this encounter will take place as the clockwork orbit continues towards the star's eventual supernova finale. That is what they're waiting for. And like I said, they will be watching for small signs, but no one knows when it will occur. But at least we have those observation points. But it could happen at any moment. It doesn't say that it's relying on the 2025 report and the 5.5 year to experience a supernova. It just increases the strain at that point. But our Father has his hand on that switch. Now they're looking closely, guys, going back to the 2025 pass at the data. It says it has been steadily brightening over the last few decades. This suggests the dust from its 1840 great eruption is finally clearing away, giving us a clearer look at the system, or the clearest look in nearly 2 centuries at the system. Could be, or it could be just getting brighter. Now we got another one at that same exact distance at 75,000 or 100 light years. The other massive unstable system that space scientists are intensely monitoring at this exact distance is what's called WR25 or Wolf-Rayet 25. It's 75,000 light years away with the exact same turbulent cosmic neighborhood called the Carina Nebula. WR25 is a sister system to Eta Carinae that we just watched, or Eta Carinae. It is another ticking time bomb that scientists watch closely because it is also expected to end its life in a catastrophic supernova or hypernova. Now, it's called a hidden monster, this WR25. It says while Eta Carinae gets most of the mainstream fame, WR25 is actually one of the most luminous and powerful stars in the entire Milky Way galaxy. Think about that, guys. At just 7,500 light years, it shines with the power of roughly 6 million of our suns. This binary setup, just like Eta Carinae, WR25 is a binary star system. All the ones are, just about. The primary star is a rare Wolf-Rayet star, a highly evolved ultra-hot giant that has completely blown off its outer layers of hydrogen, exposing its burning helium. Think about that. The fuse, the orbital companion, the primary star, is orbited by a massive, hot O-type companion star. The two orbit each other every 208 days. And it's a giant, we know that, but why are they watching it? Because it's losing mass rapidly. Wolf-Rayet stars are in a frantic final stage of stellar evolution. WR25 is shedding its own mass at an astronomical rate through violent stellar winds, blasting material into space at speeds of thousands of kilometers per second. Colliding wind fireworks, guys, because the two stars are so massive and close together, their hypervelocity stellar winds continuously slam into each other. It's like a close-up boxing match between heavyweights. This violent, constant collision creates an incredibly powerful shock that heats the surrounding gas to tens of millions of degrees, causing the system to constantly flare with intense, high-energy X-flares. Those are the two they're watching. Both are, again, possibly at the right distance to strip away many of the elements, but possibly leave the core and some of the inhabitants intact. But this fits the description that Peter was talking about, and again, using simply coming as a thief in the night, and the heavens melting away. Again, we would see the building of a solar flare or the X flare and know that the CME is arriving. Unless it was a super explosion. Like I said, protons are in a coronal mass ejection, but photons, light particles, are in the initial shock that happens so fast that we get it at light speed and it hits Earth in 8.2 minutes. Would it be one of that category, but so strong? We don't know. But we don't know the timing. Thief in the night. It seems to add up. And why are they spending millions of dollars watching these two? Well, we don't know the end or the full answer. But guys, I'm watching. You are watching with me, and I appreciate you sharing this time with us. Think about what I showed you, and I probably don't mention it enough, but I've never given anybody a copyright strike in all of these years. You're welcome to share every bit of it. I mean, the only restriction would be one if YouTube put one on you or something. I don't know. But share this, put it on your Facebook, anywhere you go, and let people look at it. Let people start to think about what we're looking at. Just like this, NASA's watching this. Because WR25 is rapidly running out of nuclear fuel, scientists monitor its X-ray flares and wind collisions using space telescopes. It represents the exact type of rapid collapse star that could ultimately trigger a long-duration gamma-ray burst when its core finally implodes. And that would be the problem, and it would happen very quickly, and it would strip away the elements and the works. But our Father has ways that He works. Many times He's taken away these works with floods and possibly other calamities. But this time, why fire? Maybe it's because of the extent of the works themselves. Maybe back in the day of Noah, they didn't have oil rigs leaking oil into the oceans and wars blowing up oil-laden ships and oil fields rusting and oil leaking and the salt domes leaking in the Gulf of America, killing the beautiful marine life. A flood wouldn't do anything but displace that to another area. High temperatures will burn it. Maybe He didn't have a choice this time because of man's greed and stupidity. Just like the oil, they're doing it to the water now. Anyway, guys, again, I think it's a positive note to try to understand and relate that it is not, if we're looking at it correctly, the end of the planet, but the end of it as we see it in the end of the works that will allow a rebalance that our Father has promised us. Bringing back the natural earth, bringing back the balance of the seasons where we don't have this chaotic weather. Putting it all back the way it was, creating it the way it was meant to be. We're watching it, guys. Our Father loves you. I love you. Keep your heads up and you be safe.